So this is the Long Walk, and this is it's a film that was a book that was written by Stephen King under the name Richard Bachman, all the way back in the 60s. It was released in the 1970s, and the whole idea about it is that you're in a alternative America, a future America, a dystopian America, whatever it is you want to call. And in the film, what happens is that there's a lottery because this America is recovering from a civil war, and it's gone into like economic downturn. And they have this thing that they do called the Long Walk that apparently raises morale each year, and it's a televised thing where you take a boy from each, or a boy or a young man from each of the 50 states of America. They go to one state and then they walk. And the whole idea behind this is that they just keep walking, and they walk until they walk until only one of them is remaining. And they have rules about it. They have to maintain a speed of 3 miles per hour. If they drop below 3 miles per hour, they get a warning. If they get enough warnings, they just get shot. And that's the thing. They get shot, they get killed, and this keeps happening until there's only one person left. And this happens every year. And it's this thing. And so you meet this group of 50 kids, or 50 whatever, 50 people who show up, and it's about them just walking. And this film is essentially if you want to know what this film is about, it's in the title, The Long Walk. This film is one long walk along what seems to be a never-ending stretch of road through like towns and all that kind of stuff. They're not allowed to rest. They're not allowed to sleep. They're not allowed to stop. They're not allowed, and they just have to keep going. It stars and the film focuses mainly on two characters. There's played by Cooper Hoffman, the son of Philip Seymour Hoffman, and David Johnson, who some people might know from Rye Lane. And they play the two main characters, Garrity and McVrees. And through them and through the other kids who are around them and through you just sort of like get to meet this group of people and keep going, and you see. And this is not a film that says, ooh, they might get killed, but don't worry, there'll be a last-minute reprieve. There's a lot of kids getting killed in this film. Let me just put it there. There's a lot of kids getting killed in this film. And that's about the setup for the film. What happens, what goes on. You find out about why they're doing the walk, what would actually possess somebody to do this in the first place, what they all hope to get out of it, and how somehow they all think they're going to win. even though the odds are 1 in 50, they all think that they're going to win. And what did you think of this, John?
Okay, well, if you want to know, I'm probably going to go totally against the grain and everyone else.
Yeah.
Started off all right. I found it a bit dull. I found it a bit boring,
Yep.
to be honest. With a lot, I can understand what they were trying to do with the character build up and everything. And I just thought, what is the reason behind it? At least for something like the Hunger Games, you knew that I just couldn't see why they would. I thought, why? What is it? Surely that's a waste of young talent. There might be some talent there. What's the point? What's the whole point of the exercise? Is it just to? Is it like to subdue the population, or to scare them? Or
it's funny because obviously, I mean, this. You mentioned the Hunger Games there. This is directed by the guy who directed all but one of the Hunger Games films that we've had. So the guy he's spent a lot of time in that world, and there's some plot differences from the book where you see that he's made this a little bit more Hunger Games. Like there's things like about the way that the people are selected is a lot more Hunger Games. But I agree with you. In the Hunger Games, there's a lot more of this is the world that we're in. This is who the president is. This is why they do this thing this way. This is where these are the haves and the have-nots, and they flesh out the world a little bit more. In this film, they and I think this is something that they do in the book as well, because apparently the book was written, and many people think that it's like an allegory for Vietnam. Like the idea being that you have like you have all these young men who are conscripted in, who are shipped off, and they are totally seen as they're seen as expendable. They're seen as expendable. It doesn't really matter. So
I can actually now you've mentioned it, and now thinking about it, a pointless thing to send young men to die. So right, okay.
Yeah,
an aspect I never thought of.
Yeah, and I think that's part of that is because obviously he wrote this in the 60s. Stephen King wrote this in the 60s when he was a 19-year-old himself. It was published about a decade later, and you're taking a story that was written in the 60s and was written in a very particular context in the 60s. And I think that what they're trying to do with this film, because I agree with you totally. I agree that there needs to be, you're like, where's the context? Why are they doing this? Why is this the only thing on TV that people watch? Why do people get behind it? Why is nobody yelling saying this is barbaric? and there are all these questions. And I feel like what they've done is that they've tried to make sure that they sort of do it in such a way so that you can almost read what you want into it.
Yeah.
So I feel like there's people who will watch this film and they would say, yes, I could totally see, you're talking about an America in decline coming from in a civil war. And the thing is, in the book, for instance, there's no mention of America coming out of a civil war or anything like that. It's just this alternate dystopian thing. Yeah. But they've put that stuff in this film, and I think it's because you're supposed to read what you're into it. But I agree with you that it does ask the question. It makes you ask the question, okay, why the heck are you doing this? Why is this your solution? And you have Mark Hamill, who shows up and chews the scenery as the major. Mark Hamill, and bearing in mind, talking about the Stephen King films, Mark Hamill's second Stephen King movie of the year.
Wow.
Yeah, because he was in Life with Chuck as well. Mark Hamill's second Stephen King movie of the year.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and so he's playing the major, growling, going, oh, yeah, boys are doing great. I'm so proud of you, boys. And everything. And yeah, like, who is he? Why is he coming up there? All that kind of stuff. And
he's so popular. Yeah.
Yeah, so I 100% agree with you.
Yeah. Also, the one, it's a stupid moment, but it was a Vietnam man again. Well, actually, there's a couple, but the really one that really got to me was the one character that I thought had probably the best chance of winning it.
Yes.
Does something absolutely stupid, totally out of character. So they've been walking all that time.
Yeah.
Walking all the time. You've got to know a few of the characters. You're right about the two main ones.
Yeah.
And he's in it. He's on the peripheries, and I'm like, but that's the one that you would give. Do you know the guy? I
know exactly who you're talking about. Even at the beginning, they look at him and they kind of go, "Yeah, he's going to win."
I don't understand why he would do something like that. You know?
And I think, and this is part. First of all, I think that they've done a very good job adapting what looks. It's about a whole bunch of kids going for a walk, and every now and then one of them gets shot. And I think making it into a film, I think that they've actually done quite a good job on that. Yeah. But part of the problem I feel is they show elements of it as to what would walking for that amount of time and not being allowed to sleep, what would that do to your mind? What would that do to your body? They show bits of it, but I feel like if they'd shown more of it, that somehow what was going on in these people's minds, some of these things would have made more sense. There is a character that essentially...
You're going to talk about him, and I bet I can take the character you're going to talk about. Anyway, yeah, go on, carry on.
Well, he's the one that everybody ostracizes because of something that he does early on. Yeah,
coming with that one, man.
So everyone ostracizes. And he ends up doing something, and they kind of hint at it. But I feel like, I guess with 50 people, you can't really sort of give that for everybody. But I feel like there's like, for instance, one of my problems about it was these people are walking for the best part of a week.
Yeah.
And by the time it ends, because spoiler alert, this film actually ends eventually. By the time it ends, I don't feel like if somebody hasn't been allowed to sleep for a week or anything like that, I feel like you would look at them and be like, whoa, man, you look like death.
Yeah, it's on, yeah.
Yeah, and they don't really look that dead and I feel like if they did look a little bit more, like for instance, okay, you know that there's one character who walks for so long that he becomes unresponsive. Yes. He becomes unresponsive, and he's just going there, and his head's down, and his baseball caps and everything and he's walk. And like with him, for instance, right? I think they showed enough of him to show you that this guy's deteriorating, so that when he eventually does what he does, you're like, okay, cool, yeah. I kind of understand it.
No, I know exactly what you're talking about.
And it's so
isn't it funny? Isn't it funny though that the characters that we know, the ones we're talking about, so we must have.
Yeah, well, I feel like the film is very definite about what it does because it had to be like, and also another thing, Sean, it was written by the guy who wrote and directed Strange Darling.
Right. Okay.
Remember
yeah,
that?
I remember Strange Darling.
I remember you quite like that, and and so I think that they've done quite well in sort of like streamlining it, and there's bits where they try and tell you with the dialogue what people are doing, what people are thinking. Sometimes I have to admit, with some of the different regional American accents, I found it hard to understand what people were saying. But I think that they did a good job. But there are a couple of niggles where you're like, that, and there's a bit where the central pairing, it's veering into the trope. Like there's a trope in Hollywood called the magical Negro trope.
Right. Okay.
Where it's all about where you have like a white main character, and then you have the legend Will Smith, the Legend of Bag of Vance, for instance. This happens over and over again, like Driving Miss Daisy. You have a white main character, and they have a black secondary character, and the only reason the black secondary character exists is to help the white character achieve their dreams, because they have some sort of mystical, but they don't really have any. They don't really have any life.
Redemption redemption.
It's kind of like, but the black actor doesn't really have any agency, doesn't really have any life of their own, and there's bits where this film between David Johnson and Cooper Hoffman, it strays into that a little bit, and I think that they kind of pull it back. But all in all, at the end, I think I would actually give this film a 4. I mean,
would you? Yeah,
I think just about, okay. Because there are some things which like essentially to give it a 4. There's some things I have to ignore, and I have to say I kind of see what you're doing there, but I want to understand why the heck this thing is happening in the first place. I want to understand why people are behind it.
For me, I found it a little bit dull after a while. It sort of started to get on my nerves a little bit after a while. So, I mean, I can see the intrinsic quality of it. I can see what they're trying to do. I quite like what you've informed me about the allegory, which I think, I could see that, like, craziness and other different things. So that's put a little bit more of a slant on it to me. But I'm still only going to give this a 3. I think this is a 3 for me.
And I totally understand. I totally understand and largely agree with you. So it's kind of like, all right, cool.